Hi, my name is Mr. Gomes, and today we're going to be doing changing a tire using the tire changer. And we're going to go through the steps, so if everybody would like to get their pages out. When using this machine, we have to be cautious of safety, so we must have a pair of safety glasses, okay, and a shop coat. Of course, you must have no jewelry on, and your shirt must be tucked in. First things first, step one for remove and replace a tire is measuring tread depth using a tire depth gauge. So how we do this, class, it's very simple. So we take our tire, and in these larger, longer radial grooves, we would take our tire tread depth, zero it, so pull it back all the way, put it in the grooves, and find which line lines up with the stem. So we have a 3 millimeter tread depth of this tire. Okay? So that's done, and I will record that on my project. Next is to deflate the tire using the valve core. Now this is important that we have to use our safety glasses here. So I get my valve core remover from the tool room, put the tire facing up, I remove the valve cap. Okay, I take my valve core remover, it's very much like a screwdriver. I place it in there and I start loosening. Now, very careful that when the air starts coming out, I don't loosen all the way and remove the screwdriver because the valve core could shoot out. So we have to make sure we catch it. Like so. So I'm going to place this somewhere so I don't lose it. So we make sure all the air comes out of the tire before moving forward. Once that's done, what we have to do is break the bead of the tire. And what that is the tire is forced or press fit onto the rim, and we have to dislodge it. So what we do here, step 3 is break tire bead on both sides of wheel, 180 degrees opposite of each other. So we take the tire off the machine, I bring it down to the side, okay? I place the tire, the bead breaker in between the rim and the tire there. Very important though, we never break the bead by the valve stem. Some vehicles have a tire pressure monitoring system, and that sensor is in behind the valve stem. If we break the bead right here, we would damage that sensor. So I always break the bead away from the valve stem, like so. So I hold the tire, I hold the handle, and I press the foot operated pedal. The foot-operated pedals of this machine are all picture-oriented. So the tire bead braking, it's this one here. Okay, I press and hold the buttons. Okay, here we go. So you can see the bead is broken away from the wheel. It has not broken away from this line, so I'm going to remove it. I'm going to turn the wheel and do it at 180 degrees. I also have to do the opposite side of the wheel. So I have to break the bead on 4 different locations. Now the bead is completely broken off the tire on this side of the wheel. Next we have to rotate the tire and do the back half. Okay, and it's been broken off. Next step is to place the wheel on the turntable with the valve stem up. Always lifting with your legs, never with your back. We always place the wheel with the valve stem up, but the face of the wheel up, so not to scratch the wheel. Wheels are very expensive, so we try not to damage them in any way. So next step is to lubricate the tire bead using the tire soap. So when we remove the tire, we have to add a lubricant, and we have a special soap here specifically for that. And here it is. Okay, we have a brush here, the applicator. So I lower the tire bead, and I put a generous coat of lube all the way around. Very generous coat. This is going to aid us in removing the tire. If we don't put this soap on here, we could damage the tire and possibly get hurt ourselves. So I do that, not forgetting the opposite side of the wheel. Now I don't want to force the brush into the wheel there because it has a tendency to break. move the head column so that it lines up with the wheel. Okay, before we do that, we also have to set the rim clamps. The wheel here is very loose on the turntable, and there's 4 little clamps there that secure the wheel to the machine. Okay, and that's operated by, again, a foot pedal. So I'm going to press and let go of this button. I'm not going to hold it. Now the wheel is secured. Okay, so next step is to bring the head column down to the wheel, and again, foot operated pedal. And I'm going to press and let go. Okay, so now the head column is in the proper position, but now I also need to adjust the head column based on the different types of wheels that I have. So what I want is I want this corner of the head column to be resting on the edge of the wheel. So right here to here. So I press and hold this button, press and hold this button, and that's going to allow me to move the head column in and out and up and down. Once I find the position that I like, I will let go of the button and it'll lock in that position. So here we go. That's it. Okay, so now it's locked. Head column is in the position. We have the 4 clamps locking the wheel to the turntable. I have my safety glasses on. I'm ready for the next step, which is prying the tire over the head column. Using the pry bar on the machine, okay, we're going to use the curved end away from us, and it's very important that I place the pry bar in the specific location. Some students have a tendency to place the pry bar over here, and that's not prying the tire over the head column. I'm simply prying the tire over the rim. I want to pry the tire over the head column, like so. So now the tire is sitting above the head column, the pry bar is in place. Okay, I make sure I have no long sleeves here. I'm going to turn the turntable, and the tire is going to unscrew from the rim. It's going to turn in a clockwise manner, righty-tighty type manner. So again, I'm going to press the foot operated pedal, and this one I'm going to press and hold. So that's one side of the tire. So now we have half the tire off the rim. We got to do the same for the back half, but a lot of students have the tendency of taking the tire and flipping it over. That would be scratching the rim. So we want to keep the tire in the same position. The head column stays in the same position. Simply using your pry bar with your hook away from you, put it in the same position, try to grab the bottom half of the tire and pry it over the head column again. Okay, like so. So again, we have the tire over the head column. I'm going to press the foot operated pedal, and the tire is going to rotate in a clockwise manner, and it's going to unscrew from the rim. Here we go. And like so. So now we have the tire removed from the rim. I'm going to place my pry bar back, because the pry bar is only used for removing the tire. I'm going to remove the head column away from the tire, and I'm going to do that with the foot operated lever again. I'm going to press and let go. So now I have my tire off my rim. Okay? Now, in some cases, it's very important that we place the tire back on the rim in the same location. So when I removed the tire, I made a mental note noting that this side of the tire was facing out. If in some cases I place the tire back in the opposite direction, I'll end up with wear pattern problems when I put it back on the vehicle. Also, some tires are directional, meaning they're designed to roll in a specific direction. And if I place the tire on the wrong way, then it's going to take the water that it encounters and place it in the center of the tire instead of expelling it away from the tire. So I made a mental note, or if you feel that you need to make a mark, I'll use an old piece of chalk and I'll put an X on the side that's up. Using chalk because chalk comes off very easy. I'll clean my tire with a used rag to make sure there's no debris there. Nice and clean. Okay? Both sides. Make sure it's smooth. And if you need be, you grab a small wire brush or a large wire brush and you can clean up the area of the tire. This tire seems to be in relatively good shape. So we'll place this to the side. Okay? Now, let's wipe down the rim and let's see what we have. Now, the reason why I might want to replace a tire on a rim is for several reasons. One, I might want to put a brand new tire on the rim. Or two, I might want to fix a tire leak. Now you can see here there's no tube in this tire. This is what we call a tubeless tire. And most vehicles on today's roads use a tubeless tire. And the tubeless tire seals the tire up against the rim. So if this surface is irregular, if it has any sort of rust or oxidization, then they won't be a good seal. So you can see here that this rim is very clean, but it's not always about how it looks, it's about how it feels. If you can feel any bumps with your finger, then we need to sand them down or use a large wire brush to sand down in this location here on both sides of the rim. Very, very important. Have your instructor inspect this point. Another reason why I might want to change it, remove the tire off the rim, is to change the valve stem itself. The valve stem has a tendency to leak on occasion. That's not a part of this project here, but it will be a part of projects of the future. But occasionally we might want to change the valve stem. Valve stems are disposable, they're cheap, they only cost a couple of dollars, okay, and they're to be replaced every time you put a new tire on. Once you've cleaned both sides of the rim, your teacher has inspected it, you've cleaned the tire, your teacher has inspected it, and you've decided which side of the tire is supposed to be facing up, you may forge ahead to reinstall the tire on the rim. Step one is to lubricate the tire. So take your tire soap, put a liberal amount of tire soap on your tire itself. It's very important that there's a lot of lubrication here, or else the tire itself could rip. Now we're putting the tire soap on what we call the tire bead. And this portion of the tire is heavily reinforced with steel so that it keeps its shape while inflated. So we make sure that it's heavily lubricated. Remember, a tire isn't just made of rubber, it's made of several components. There's a lot of steel as well as nylon. So the tire doesn't really stretch over the rim. It doesn't do a very good job of that. We need the machine in order to aid us to install it. And of course, a lot of soap. I place it back on the rim with the side that I've marked up. Some people are a little fanatic and they even mark where the tire was lined up with the valve stem, which makes a lot of sense for later projects like the tire balancing project. It aids in balancing the tire. Nevertheless, let's install. So I place the tire on a 45 on the rim like so, and I'm going to readjust the headstock so it rests back on the rim. And I'm going to use my foot pedal to do that. So I'm going to press and let go of the foot pedal. Okay? Now, remember, the pry bar was strictly just for removing the tire. We don't use this for install. So this is the important part. We can see here that we have two channels on the headstock, okay? We use this channel to remove the tire. So the tire would follow this guide and would unscrew from the wheel. Now we have to use the opposite channel and the tire has to follow this guide and screw back onto the wheel. Always making sure the rim and the machine is always rotating in a clockwise manner. Go. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to place the tire on the headstock, making sure the bead of the tire is resting on this part of the screw. It's very important that it rests on top. It has a tendency to want to rest underneath, and if we rest it underneath, then we're going to end up with a ripped tire bead, and therefore it will be guaranteed to leak. So I rest it on top like so. I'm going to screw the tire in by myself, by hand, and I'm going to go as far as I can, pushing with my left hand and pulling with my right hand. I'm going to go as far as I can. And I got about 2/3 of the way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the rotating pedal and I'm going to press and hold until the tire moves around. Now, this is the location here where the tire is underneath the rim and here it's above the rim. So I'm going to push on this section here as the tire rotates, making sure it doesn't naturally want to lift up. Went down pretty easy. Next is the upper half. I'm going to do the same, sitting on top of the tire here on the bead, on the headstock. I'm going to rotate, making sure the bead of the wheel or the tire is sitting underneath the rim, and I keep on rotating as far as I can. Make sure it's well underneath, well into the cavity of the rim. I push on this location right here, and I'm going to press and hold the rotating foot pedal so that the wheel rotates. Here we go. Now I've safely installed the tire on the rim. Last step is to inflate the tire. So let's remove our head column out of our way by pressing the hand-operated lever. And now I'm going to take the safety, or no, before I do that, I'm going to rotate my tire so that my valve stem is sitting at 12 o'clock or 6 o'clock. Now I'm going to take the safety guard. Very, very important. The machine will not inflate the tire if this guard is not in place. I'm going to put my safety belt on. And now the machine is primed, ready to pump the tire up. What I'm going to do before I do that though is I don't want the air of the tire to come out. So I'm going to replace my valve core into the valve stem. Place it in there. Use the valve core remover / installer and reinstall it. Now this is not a wheel nut. I'm not going to be torquing this down to 100 foot-pounds of torque. Just a light pressure, 2-finger pressure is fine, okay? Just so that the valve stem seats against the valve core and the two seal. We're not here making sure that this is going to keep the tire on the wheel, okay? So now the best thing is to try and seat the bottom tire bead. So I push down on the tire so it seats the bottom one. And it might be a good idea to have a partner here. One person could operate the air chuck and they place it on there. And there's also another foot operated lever on the side of the machine here, and this is for air. And it's a two position foot operated lever. You press one position and air simply comes out of the chuck. If you press it even further, air comes out from underneath the turntable. Okay, so it's a two position button there. I'm going to push down. I'm going to try and hold up the tire up against the rim and press down. Go. So the tire does not want to inflate. I'm having a hard time here. So what I'm going to do is to aid the tire in inflating, I'm going to remove the valve core. And when you remove the valve core, we can gain 4 times more air velocity through the valve core, through the valve itself. So I'm going to remove it for now, replacing it later, so don't lose it.
Okay, go ahead.
The tire is still being stubborn, so there is a little bit more we can do. I went to the tool and I went to go get my valve chuck. I'm going to use my airline here, which has a lot more air pressure and a lot more air volume. So I'm going to unwrap my airline a couple of times, so I can reach my machine. I'm going to plug in my valve core. Okay. Now I need to turn the air on. So I have 2 valves here, 2 ball valves. When the ball valves are perpendicular, when the handles are perpendicular to the line, it blocks airflow. So we have air pressure from this side, and since it's turned off, we have no air pressure here. So turn it on is simply raising. To turn it off, same way, just opposite direction. But we also want to release the pressure in the line, and that's where the red valve comes in place. Now, make sure we don't leave the valve in this position because this could be very loud if we tend to turn it on with the valve open. So I close the valve, turn my valve on. My air hose is now filled with air. So now I'm going to try and fill the tire up with my air chuck.